Read to Lead Podcast, Episode 0.
Welcome to the Read to Lead podcast with Jeff Brown. Jeff believes that if you desire to achieve true success in business and in life, then consistent and intentional reading is a must. The Read to Lead podcast will not only help you narrow this ever-important reading list, but also bring you key insights and valuable feedback from some of today's most successful and inspiring authors. And now, here's Jeff.
Thank you so much for joining me. I am so glad that you're here. Your first question is likely something along the lines of, what is this podcast about? Well, to start off, this podcast is based on the belief that intentional and consistent reading is key to success in business and in life. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do. If you love to read, particularly nonfiction, and you understand and appreciate the benefits that come along with doing so, then this is the podcast for you. One of my goals is to help you find the best of the best in today's nonfiction, like you heard in the intro, to narrow that ever-important reading list because we're all busy. But more than that, you and I together get to sit down and chat with a new author each week, people I believe to be some of the brightest minds among us today. Now think about it. Virtually everyone we'll hear from on this journey charges several hundred or several $1,000s for an hour of their consulting time, but you and I get 30 minutes of their time for free. I hope you understand just how valuable that really is. Now, if you're not currently reading a great deal, but you're here because you desire to do more of it or you feel you should be doing more, maybe you're having difficulty squeezing in time for it or whatever, then let this podcast serve as an encouragement to you as you make that journey. If that is you, I hope that listening to this podcast can spur you on to finding more time to devote to reading. But if that doesn't happen, then that's okay too. You'll find no judgment here. In other words, if you're looking for an audio version of Cliff's Notes and the Read to Lead podcast can fill that gap, that's fine by me. In fact, be sure to stick around to the end of this episode for more resources along those lines. Either way, at the end of each episode, you'll know definitively whether or not a particular book is for you. And even if you determine that it isn't, I think it's safe to say you'll have learned something new along the way just for having stuck around. Okay, that's a little bit about what the podcast is. Now, what the podcast isn't. This isn't a book review podcast. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there are more than enough of those in iTunes already. You can assume that I'm not going to waste your time with less than a stellar author, at least in my view. All my guests will be authors of what I consider to be 5-star books. Again, I'm doing the vetting for you, hopefully saving you some valuable time in the end. As promised, I'd like to share a couple of resources you may find useful on this journey. One you've likely heard of, the other one you probably haven't heard of. I've been a user of Audible.com for about 3 years now. I have to say I was resistant at first. I didn't think I could listen to a book or a business book and retain anything that I was reading. It did take some training. My mind would often wander as I would come up with ideas as I was listening. And I would go for about 10 minutes and then realize that I'd missed the last 10 minutes of the book and have to go back. So I eventually had to train myself to, when that happened, just pause the book and come back and pick up later. Took a little bit of doing, but I eventually came around and was able to make that happen. Now, in the interests of full disclosure, as they say, I will say that I hope to develop an affiliate or advertising relationship with Audible down the road. Makes sense for a podcast about reading, right? Maybe even saving you some money in the process if that comes together, but we're not there just yet. Podcast is still too young. Either way, it is a product I believe in. Audible.com and podcasts themselves, I think, are a fantastic way to take your daily commute or your run or your workout and turn it into an awesome time of learning and productivity. The other resource is one I just recently discovered, and it's called Get Abstract. Get Abstract produces 5-page book summaries for just about every new book that comes out. They even do audio versions of these summaries, about 8 to 10 minutes long. With an annual membership, you can get access to dozens of new book summaries every single month. Pretty cool, right? Now, I do have an affiliate relationship with Get Abstract. However, it doesn't cost you anything extra. Think of it as a way to cast your vote for this podcast with the folks at Get Abstract, letting them know that you appreciate their support and involvement with the show. Now, to check out all they have to offer, just go to readtoleadpodcast.com/summary. That's readtoleadpodcast.com/summary. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, I would be grateful if you could rate it in iTunes and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. This will increase the likelihood of the podcast getting noticed by folks like you who appreciate this kind of content. And to rate and review the podcast, just go to readtoleadpodcast.com/iTunes. That's readtoleadpodcast.com/iTunes. Another way to get involved and stay in the know is by liking our Facebook page. Just go to readtoleadpodcast.com/Facebook. Now, should you desire to share your discovery of this podcast with others, that's easy as well. To share a tweet that's already been written out for you, simply go to readtoleadpodcast.com/Twitter. That's readtoleadpodcast.com/Twitter. And on our website homepage, I invite you to enter your email address and first name to be added to the Read to Lead newsletter. Currently, the plan is to send out about 1 email a week, typically to fill you in on what's coming up. And in case it wasn't already obvious, the website homepage is readtoleadpodcast.com. Now that I've inundated you with links that you'll never be able to remember, this is as good a time as any to encourage you to visit the show notes for this episode. Each episode, including this one, 000, has a dedicated show notes page on our website. Show notes can always be found at readtoleadpodcast.com/ and then the episode number. For this episode, readtoleadpodcast.com/000. Next episode, for example, will be readtoleadpodcast.com/001, and so on and so forth. This is where you'll find the resources talked about, the links shared, virtually everything you would ever want to refer back to, in other words. This is also where you can comment on the episode and leave any feedback that you'd like. And feedback, good or bad, is always appreciated. That'll do it for this introductory episode. I hope you found it informative and useful. Remember, you can find the show notes for this episode, leave your feedback, and get all those links I talked about at readtoleadpodcast.com/000. That's readtoleadpodcast.com/000. Hope to see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to the Read to Lead podcast. As a subscriber, we challenge you to be more than just a passive listener. Become a vital member of the community. Visit us on the web at readtoleadpodcast.com and chat with other members at facebook.com/readtoleadnation. Until next time, remember, leaders read and readers lead.